Welcome to TMZ Live. Harvey Levin.
Charles here.
There is a partial verdict in the Diddy case. After 2 days, the jury has reached unanimous decisions on 4 of the 5 counts.
The problem is that 5th count means that we don't get to find out what the verdicts are on the other 4 because they are hung up on racketeering.
Which is what we talked about for days now. That racketeering from the get-go has been the problematic count
It is a
for the
very
prosecution.
complicated charge.
And a lot of people saying it's square peg, round hole, that we know that there are multiple jurors on both sides. It's not just one holdout, that on racketeering, they are stuck. But they have reached a decision on sex trafficking as it results with Cassie. They've reached a decision on the Mann Act, the interstate transportation of a sex worker, as to Cassie. They have reached a decision, unanimous, on sex trafficking as to Jane, and they have reached a decision on the Mann Act as to Jane.
So, but what does this mean? What's confusing is all of those things that you just said are also included in the racketeering count.
So we don't know what the vote is.
So we don't know what the vote is. It's hard to read what they possibly came up with.
Let me read between the lines on what you're saying, because with Charles, I think it's just a valid point that you need to find 2 crimes in order to apply the RICO statute, the racketeering statute. If they found Diddy guilty on the Mann Act, which is the most likely as to both Jane and Cassie, those are 2 illegal counts. And therefore,
so we think they'd have enough.
So what I'm saying to you is, and I said to you all along, which is Diddy really the racketeer that people are used to hearing?
And so you think that perhaps there's a juror or 2 or more
than one,
who are confused about the racketeering. Like, how can this be racketeering if it's just Diddy doing it?
And the reason I say that is we know early on there was one juror, remember, where the jury said he's not following the law.
Juror 25.
And I said to you, I think this is a racketeering charge, that it just...
that's the one they were hung up on.
So we don't know as to the other 4 whether Diddy has been found guilty or not guilty, but there's a hint that with Cassie, the jury asked to review a transcript where
she was talking about a flight from Cannes to New York.
Right.
And this is the flight where Diddy said to her, she testified that he showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm going to put this video out. I'm going to send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified to that.
If the jury
believed her, that's coercion. And they would have Cassie. They would have sex trafficking of Cassie.
The complication is that Cassie never mentioned that in her direct testimony when she was on the stand. She never mentioned it on cross-examination. Only on redirect did the...
So you think that the jury might not believe her because they might be thinking, well, why wouldn't she have brought that up in the first place when she was testifying?
What I'm saying to you is maybe that's why they wanted to review the transcript. But... I mean, I don't think this is great news for Diddy that they came back this quickly unanimously.
Well, the reports from inside the court are that he was sitting there looking pretty upset when they came back and said that they had reached a verdict on 2, 3, 4, and 5.
I think it's pretty terrible news for Diddy if they were asking for this testimony, because it suggests that there's a dynamic of trying to convince someone who is holding out belief that these were maybe not consensual. You bring that testimony and put it in front of them and say, oh, really? Look at the Intercontinental Hotel. Look at the threat on the flight to Cannes. Look at this evidence of this sex worker who said he heard Cassie being slapped around by Diddy and then forced to participate in a freak-off. That's the kind of testimony you ask for when you're trying to convince someone. That's why I think it's probably leaning towards guilt. Now, on the racketeering, I agree with you that the predicate acts may be found, but that's not all they need. There's an ultimate question. The first question on the jury verdict form is, do you find him guilty or not guilty of racketeering? Before you even get to the predicate acts, which you only get to if you find guilt, they could just be hung up on that question and say, this guy's not Tony Soprano. I am not convinced that I even want to find guilt on the act.
Yeah. Now, here's the complication. The jury came in and said, look, we can't make a decision on racketeering. We seem deadlocked. And then the question is, Jason, help me out here. There's something called the Allen charge, which is kind of the nuclear weapon of a judge, where the judge kind of gently badgers them and says, you got to reach a decision in some form. And there was a lot of talk about whether the judge should give that charge or just send him back, or just throw his hands up and say, you're hung, and that's it, and we'll just read the 4 counts.
Yeah, so prosecutors wanted a modified Allen charge, some sort of an instruction from the judge when sending them back in to deliberate that it varied in some way from the original charge he gave them to deliberate until they have a verdict. The defense immediately said, no, we shouldn't modify the Allen charge, at least not yet. They sort of held off, it may happen later on. But because what the defense wants is no change. They don't want the judge to say anything that might sort of persuade those holdout jurors to come around. They want to keep it status quo, send them back in, which is ultimately what happened. Send them back in, Your Honor, with no additional charge, just to keep on doing their job, because they're convinced that at this point, if they haven't reached a verdict after, what's it been, 14 hours, they're not going to reach a verdict without an additional charge.
So the defense wants to keep however many jurors are the holdouts, keep them that way so that they will get a hung jury.
I think they want a hung jury on racketeering, for sure. Now, here's the rub. So they're going to be in court tomorrow deliberating. They've gone home for the night. They're going to be in court tomorrow. The dynamic with juries, and we've just seen this over and over and over again, is when they're up against a 4-day holiday, they miraculously come together.
They seem motivated, right? They seem motivated to get this done.
Yeah.
They wanted to get it done today. They would have, I think the jury was...
They were happy with 4 out of 5.
Happy with the 4 or 5, and we're probably hoping the judge... We're hoping the judge would just send him home.
There's a really good point on this, because the prosecution wanted the judge to mention to the jury that they may have to come back on July 3rd, which is supposed to be a holiday. The defense said, we don't want you to mention that, Judge. And they specifically said, because if you say to them they have to come back July 3rd, it might motivate them to actually reach a resolution tomorrow.
On Wednesday.
Yes, on Wednesday. And so instead, what they want the jury to think, hey, if we can, those holdout jurors, if we can just hold out for tomorrow, we'll be sent home, hung jury, we're done. If the jury knew that they might have to come back on Thursday, then they might have a problem.
Nothing drives consensus like a 4-day weekend. That's right. I'm telling you, like that jury is sitting there, and if there's one holdout, he's sweating, or he or she.
Yeah.
Elise Mahover from New York, and it's not surprising that the jury is hung up on the racketeering charge in the Diddy case, because that's sort of a really complex charge, and also it's good that they have found him, or, they made a decision on the 4 other counts, but honestly, I thought RICO was the charge that they had in the bag, and now it looks like they'll end up convincing at least the other 4 counts, but let's see what happens with the...
Yeah, they may or may not make a decision. So listen, to summarize, the jury has come back unanimously with verdicts on sex trafficking as to Jane and Cassie, on the Mann Act as to Jane and Cassie, but they have some kind of split, and it's not 11-1. It's multiples on each side. We don't know what the multiples are, but they seem to think that they're all dug in and they can't make a decision. So they're back tomorrow. They're up against a 4-day holiday. So tomorrow might be a
4-day holiday or just a 3-day holiday?
It might be Judgment Day for Diddy, where the verdict is read, and like you said, Diddy was not looking too happy in court.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
When we come back, there will be no jury in the Bryan Kohberger case, why the victims' families are infuriated at his plea deal that spares him from the death penalty.
So there is extreme anger by at least 2 of the families who had family members slaughtered in the Idaho murders, where Bryan Kohberger has now cut a plea deal with prosecutors where the death penalty is off the table. He will plead guilty as early as tomorrow to 4 counts of murder and then spend the rest of his life behind bars. 2 families say it is an outrage, and they weren't even notified ahead of time that this was going to happen.
Right, and there is, as Harvey said, the anger is coming from the Gonsalves family. Their daughter, Kaylee, was killed that night, and also from the Kernodle family. Xana Kernodle was the victim that night. But both of their families have said They were not only blindsided by this, but they are angry and did not want this outcome. They wanted their day in court to face Bryan Kohberger, and it didn't happen. This is what Steve Gonsalves, Cailin's father, had to say about the DA's decision to strike this plea deal.
This is anything but justice. This is the opposite of our will. There was no majority believing that this was acceptable. I want to honor all the police officers, the FBI, and all the people that work their tail off. The failure is at the court level, 100%. People need to stand up to these monsters and stop freaking bowing down to them and giving them child care. I mean, prison is nothing but adult child care. We had an outsider come to our community, kill our kids in their sleep while they're getting a college education, doing everything that they should do, and we don't have the courage to hold him accountable. No plea deal. Let's go for this guy. 100%. Let's do it. And that's how this family stands.
So the judge
on News Nation last night with Ashley Banfield.
The judge has to approve this, and that could be a wild card. We don't know. They're going to go to court tomorrow, and presumably they're going to ask the judge to accept the plea. There have been cases where judges have rejected it. I don't really see it here, but I will say this: we found another case in the late 90s,
96,
and it was interesting because
similar.
It was similar. There was a stabbing, 2 people stabbed. The same DA, who was the DA now, was the DA then, and they did the same thing. They took the death penalty off the table. And in this case, we have been calling the DA, we've been hammering them on the phones. They are radio silent, no explanation for why they're doing this. As a matter of fact, we talked to one of the family members who said they had a meeting late last week and they were trying to prepare them for trial. And then all of a sudden, this happens.
Right. So that's the reason for the anger. Now, we should say that there are 2 other families that are on board with this and actually think that this is going to save them and the families of all the victims a lot of heartache in going through this trial and potentially years of appeals. So what do you do in this case where the the emotions are running so high? And I think tomorrow in court is going to be very, very interesting. Absolutely. Because Stephen Gonsalves, who you just saw, said he is going to be there, and he wants to be heard. He said he's going to be out in front of the court speaking to anybody who will listen.
He'll speak inside the court. I mean, there's got to be a victim's
right. Actually,
he
said that he doesn't want to go in there because he doesn't want to be party to this at all. Because he's assuming they're just going to go in, he's going to plead, and that's going to be the end of it.
Well, they can speak. Well, we will see, though. They
will be able to speak, certainly, in sentencing.
It'll be interesting if they can speak to challenge the plea. That will be interesting.
Yes.
So, look, there's somebody who has been all over this case from the get-go.
For years now. Stephanie Lidecker has a podcast called The Idaho Massacre, and she knows this case as well as anyone.
And I would say as well as the prosecutors.
yeah, and maybe better, some people would say today. So joining us is Stephanie Lidecker. Stephanie, welcome to TMZ Live.
Thank you for having me. I wish under better circumstances. This has been jaw-dropping, and it's a real bombshell, and the families they're grieving, and it seemed to come out of nowhere. You know, Harvey, you and I were speaking yesterday. This was a shock. He was looking for a delay in his trial. He was trying to push the trial as recently as last week. That was denied. What was the thing that caused him to make this change in the 11th hour? It's really unknowable still.
That's the question. We've called the DA. So I want to ask you about something, and I'm trying to get in their head on what is it that would make the prosecution scared enough, feel like it's risky enough to take the death, because if this isn't a death penalty case, what is? So could it be that, because there were rumblings that the defense was going to challenge the blood evidence that was on one of the sheets in that house, where it came back
that it was
on
a knife sheath.
A knife sheath,
the sheath,
rather, right. And that it came back as Kohberger's blood, that they were going to challenge that, saying that it was planted. Could that have been enough of a viable theory that would have scared prosecutors?
It seems impossible. I mean, look, some new information has come out in the last few weeks that's been pretty revelatory, to say the least. Yes, that sheath, a sheath is like the cover of this, essentially a rainbow knife, right? Yep. His Amazon, was shown to be something that he bought this knife allegedly on Amazon, and in the days after was looking for a sheath like it, also on Amazon. There was also this jaw-dropping, leak of this information about the DoorDash driver. If you're not super familiar with the case, Xander Kernodle and Ethan Chapin, two of the victims, they had ordered DoorDash after a night being out with friends. They all had been out like college students are supposed to be, and they got their food, and soon after were slaughtered, to your point earlier. I'm talking a major overkill. And that DoorDash identity of that person, that would have potentially been an eyewitness. And information was leaked last week that this DoorDash driver was in fact out there and was apparently an eyewitness. Thank God she wasn't killed herself, but allegedly she saw Bryan Kohberger at the scene, and that would be hard to come back from.
So, everything that we've heard leading up to this seemed like the prosecutors had, if not an airtight case, so much, as we say, a mountain of evidence, and that's what makes it so odd that they would back off. Do you think that what Harvey said about this thing about the DNA, did it seem like they were setting up that they were going to be appealing this in so many different ways for years to come, and that maybe that's what made prosecutors back off?
I mean, look, all of that can be maybe explained away. DNA can be complicated, right? That could make a jury see reasonable doubt. It was only a very small amount, allegedly. But the totality of the evidence was not looking great. And is it possible that the death sentence was a bargaining tool? Is it possible that Bryan Kohberger himself, who comes from a very loving family by all accounts, we've talked to so many family members in and around his world, and he was really loved. Is it possible that one of them just said, please confess, we want you to live? We also know after the murders and prior to the bodies being discovered, Bryan Kohberger allegedly had called home, we think to his dad, and hung on the phone with him for quite a bit of time. He made 3 phone calls that morning to home. Maybe he confessed, we don't know. Is it possible that they just wanted him to be spared this firing squad that apparently he was going to have to face if he was found guilty? Look, I can understand the outrage. If I'm the Gonzalez family or the Kernodle family or the Mogan family, the Chapin family, they have been through it. They're taking the whole summer off. They're starting GoFundMes because they have to leave their jobs to be present at this trial. He got a change of venue because the fear was he wasn't able to get a fair trial because it's been so publicized. Now this maniac just confesses on a random Monday. It doesn't totally add up. I'm sure we'll have more information on Wednesday. Obviously, we'll be following it so closely, but it's scary stuff. And yeah, he'll be behind bars, his whole life. He'll be eating vegan food, apparently. He gets to live. But, those 4 victims didn't get that same option.
Stephanie, right after we spoke, I talked to one of the family members, and she was actually on, as I was talking to her, she was on a Zoom call, she said, with prosecutors. And she was pressing them to give an answer as to why they did this. And she said at one point, the person on that Zoom from the prosecutor's office was saying, we didn't want you guys to have to see all the crime scene photos of your loved ones. And the woman I spoke with said, what are you talking about? We know what happened. We wanted this to come to court. It didn't make any sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
It doesn't, and it's really unsatisfying. I mean, look, from what I know, and look, you're a lawyer, you guys know this better than I do, appeals are a thing. So if it's a death sentence trial, I think there's unlimited appeals. So this could go on forever and ever and ever, and maybe the family members would be subjected to this again and again and again. But is that for them to decide? It seems as though our contacts close to the families, they were prepared to face this.
Right.
They wanted to be able to face him also in the courtroom. And by the way, Bryan Kohberger, the accused, has been throwing all kinds of things at the wind. He's had alternate suspects that he brought in. He was accusing this person and that person. He really has been claiming his innocence until the bitter end. He has spent so much of taxpayers' dollars in Idaho. Remember that school has been affected for everybody. That entire area has been turned upside down. There's no happy ending here, but it certainly must feel very unsatisfying for the families who have been through unimaginable loss.
Stephanie, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Thank you so much. And by the way, you did amazing work, Stephanie. I mean, you've just done incredible. I mean, if I were the prosecutor, I'd just watch you every night.
Well, please, tune in tonight, True Crime Tonight on iHeartRadio. We want to hear from you. So, Harvey, you're not rid of me yet. So more on this to come.
All right.
We're happy about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
The part of this that feels so unfair is that you can't judge how anyone mourns or wants this to turn out, but you have two families that are very angry about this and two other families who actually do not want to go through this process. They want it to be over. Yeah, but they're supporting it. And so you want to be fair to both of them, but you can't.
Well, how about this?
They want different things.
You're right on that, but how about this? Why won't the prosecution, which is a public taxpayer's office, say why they did what they did?
Yeah.
Okay, we got to take a break.
All right, when we come back, Travis Kelce, you got to feel for him. He says dating Taylor Swift
is a pisser.
Is sort of, or not. You're going to hear him explain why she is ruining his golf game, sort of, or one aspect of his golf game.
TMZ's got every freaking thing. Big celebs, big stories, big events.
Justin Timberlake made Portland kids' dream come true by joining a bike bus ride. And they always listen to Justin Timberlake.
Cry me a river when they fall. Yeah, right.
It's TMZ.
Oh, you can just hear the tiny violins playing around the world for Travis Kelce.
Yeah, he's got to mind his P's and Q's.
Yes.
Actually, his P's.
And it's all because of his relationship with Taylor Swift. He was on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast and talked about the downside of their relationship. It's not anything to do with Taylor per se. It's all the attention that she gets. And now, as a result, he is getting it as well everywhere he goes, even on the golf course.
Become an A-list celebrity. What are some things that it's been over a year since we've seen you that you're like, I miscalculated this a little bit?
The paparazzi. That's probably the only thing I didn't really grasp until you're in it. And that's probably the craziest part, though. Like, I'm just playing golf and all of a sudden in the trees, a guy with a camera. And you're just like,
yeah, we're in a ghillie suit.
Yeah, like, oh, like I got to go to the restroom now. I can't just go over here and take a piss.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I just don't want my page 6.
I mean, that is pretty brutal. I know you guys aren't very big golfers, but obviously there isn't that many bathrooms on the course, and usually I'm assuming this guy, he's drinking on the course. So it's usually
I think it's a fair assumption.
It makes it way easier if you just go to a tree, but like when you're dating Taylor Swift, there's always that chance someone's gonna take a photo of your junk, and then that's all over the internet.
Yeah. The other thing that he said was, they asked him about, are you, a lot of people are saying you guys are seeking attention. And he said, we're not seeking attention, we're just kind of living our life. I believe him. I mean, I don't think they're attention seekers.
I don't think they have to. Even if they were, like, they wouldn't have to seek it. It's there.
It's about that this morning, Harvey, how, like, obviously there's a few places in town that is very known that paparazzi are going to be at every time. They don't go to those places. It's just they're two of the most famous people in the world, so they go anywhere and there's going to be people taking photos.
The one thing that was interesting when he said, when he was asked the question, he said, you're A-list now.
So he hosted Saturday Night Live before
that. Hosted Saturday Night Live, was a Super Bowl champion.
Right.
He's not on the level of Taylor Swift,
he's not,
Charles.
But he hosted SNL.
I mean, that means he's A-list.
Yeah.
Jordan from Oklahoma. I loved Travis Kelce's cheeky response to the question posed because it really showed his comedic outlook on the unconventional and in-depth media scrutiny that is their relationship. He really does love his relationship with Taylor, and Swifties specifically call his smile the Taylor Swift smile when talking about Taylor. And I think it just shows that his response was all in good fun.
Oh my God, they've named the smile?
Look at that Taylor
Seriously?
smile.
Yep.
Oh,
Swifties call it the Taylor smile.
Oh my God.
It's very poetic, isn't it? It's like poetry.
Like Lauren's dress. Okay, we're taking.
I lob him up. He knocks him out.
We're taking a break.
All right. When we come back, some people ready to give President Trump his flowers, saying that he has had perhaps the best week of his administration with so many wins. So will his opponents actually relent and say, yeah, he's done some good? Well, we're going to find out because DL Hughley is going to be with us when we come back. Welcome back to TMZ Live. You could say that President Trump is doing a bit of a victory lap. His spending bill passed the Senate today.
But
he's got that, and he was down. And he was down in the Everglades today, touring the alligator
Alcatraz.
So this is always, when Trump has good things happening. Sometimes he just doesn't get the headlines for it because of the way he delivers it, because of other things that are going on in the administration. But someone did want to give him his flowers.
So this is, to me, a somewhat unlikely person. It's Michael Smerconic. We've had him on the show. He is, I think, by all standards, a reasonable man. He doesn't feel partisan when you watch his show, which I do. I'm really a fan of his. I mean, he's been on our show.
He has his show on CNN. He has his Sirius XM show.
And he doesn't follow a party line. He's really this kind of independent thinking guy. I was surprised. He came out with a 6-minute Trump's on a roll editorial. We have condensed it to a minute. But this is the sense of it. We're going to bring in DL Hughley right after this. But this is what Smerconic said.
Viewed objectively, I have to say that Donald Trump has just had the best week or best 10 days of his second term. We've derailed Iran's nuclear program, at least temporarily. And there's some valuable deterrent effect for America's adversaries who witnessed last week's exercise. Cut to The Hague, where he arrived for NATO meetings and was able to wrangle an agreement from our allies to more than double their defense spending target from 2% of gross domestic product to 5% by 2035. Back at home, Trump claimed that he's reached a trade deal with China and soon expects the same with India. Of course, Trump's initial imposition of tariffs wreaked havoc on American markets back in the spring. But now the markets have rebounded and grown. Meanwhile, blue-collar workers have seen real wage growth of 1.7% in Trump's first 5 months. This is the largest such increase in nearly 3 generations. And then there's the border. Crossings have slowed to a trickle. According to CBP's May update, Southwest border encounters have fallen to about 282 a day, a drop of 93% from last year and the lowest since the early 1960s. By any objective measure, President Trump has his opponents on the run.
Wow. That is a pretty complete list there, although maybe some people would say it's incomplete and that there are some things that are being left out. So let's get into it. Joining us once again is our good friend DL Hughley. DL, what do you think of Michael Smerconic's assessment of the administration?
Well, I remember Michael when he was conservative, and he and I went at it on CNN, and on Bill Maher. So I think he's pretty much always been the same guy. Here's because we look at this from such a different prism. I'm going to try to explain it to you. I know that the economy shrunk. Everybody has these micro windows so they look at stuff. But for me, a man who's going to celebrate alligator Alcatraz refused to go to the funeral of 2 Democratic leaders who were killed. Wouldn't go to a funeral, play golf that day. So while you see that as a good thing, I think it is a failure of leadership. While you see the things that he's doing, I saw him win a victory where they get to erode the protections of the 14th Amendment. So I don't see the world the way you do. And it's honestly, it speaks to the level of the prism we see things through. Like to you, that's all great. But all of those things in concert, who do you think that hurts? the protections of the 14th Amendment being rolled back, the refusal to go to a slain political opposition leader funeral. What do those things look like to you?
And I get it. What I'm wondering, because I don't really think of Smirkanic as a conservative. I really think of him more.
He admittedly was. Admittedly, he was.
He feels independent to me. But whatever he is it possible that there's good and bad embodied in Donald Trump?
Here's the thing. Even a clock that don't work is right 2 times a day. But what you're asking me to forget is that we're celebrating some things that have happened. To me, the alligator Alcatraz is a testament to cruelty. And it's the kind of cruelty I see from this administration all the time. So to me, I said this before. You tell me about the great thing you did. It is like picking the corn out of and we do it all the time because this is what you're forced to do. To parse these things to make someone human. The bill that he's passing will hurt poor brown and poor white people. So that might be poor black, brown, and white people. So that might be celebratory to people of a certain tax bracket or of a certain hue. It's not celebratory to me. That people are going to be taken off Medicaid. Maybe something that you can politically celebrate from that prism. It's not something I can celebrate. When 3 million people are going to lose coverage in California alone. 20 million people across the country are going to lose it. And to someone from a political vantage point, that might look great. To me, people are decidedly going to be worse off. So when you ask me what he's done well, everything that you celebrate, to me, I see the other end of it because it's going to have real life consequences to people that look like me.
Yeah. Listen, and that's why I said in the intro, DL, that, even if he does something that may end up being good for the country financially for more people than not, it's hard for him to get the credit. And I think you just kind of hit on the head that there are always these other things that
and it's always so predatory.
Right, that you can't overlook.
Before credit is due. We don't know what's going to happen in Iran. It's been a week. We don't know what's going to happen with the economy. But he's so eager for credit, and people are so eager to give him to him precisely because he does so many things like that. You're trying to humanize a man who does inhuman things to me all the time. And look, you could do whatever you want. Tell me who abolishing the 14th Amendment is likely to hurt.
So, Dale, what do you make of, and I hear what you're saying, and I agree with much of what you're saying. What do you make of the polls that show that there are, among Trump supporters, people who voted for him, his numbers are higher than they've ever been in either of his administrations?
It says that abject cruelty is what they're after.
So, exactly, but I know that's what you're going to, but what does that make you feel about living here in America?
What you said to me is that he's shoring up his base, but you didn't point out the poll that talked about his erosion with independents, which is the whole ballgame.
Yeah, but what about Latinos?
I hear you.
Latinos, he's grown. Can I
have a second?
Well, first off, they're not a monolith. It ain't just one kind of Latino. I guess there would be a decidedly different vantage point if you lived in California as opposed to if you live in Florida. If you were Cuban as opposed to Mexican American. It says to me what I've always known about this country. This country, cruelty for some, even if it effective legislatively doesn't matter. Cruelty is the point. Cruelty. What is so? Why would you want to highlight building a place in the middle of an alligator? And your testament to that is they could get eaten by alligators and snakes. And the fact that more people. We live in America right now where a lot of people got mad because they didn't want a Muslim to be the leader of a city, but they have no problem with a felon and a rapist being the leader of a country. That is the dichotomy we find ourselves in. And that's the line. I think that there is too much moral ambiguity when you're on one side of the strike. It isn't that I can see that he does anything good. It's that you never see people like that, never see him do anything bad. It isn't me that is having a problem seeing. It is the people on the other side who, no matter what he does. So I turn that back on you. Why is it always I can't see him do anything good? Why is it the people that support him can't see him do anything bad?
Well said.
I get it, but at the same time, I just want to say something about that. That it's just not the argument you're making is that Republicans, or MAGA at least, they're not into democracy. My feeling is there are people on both sides, and probably the majority of the country, that's really not into democracy when you really drill down. That when it's their ass on the line, for example, with the Dobbs decision, that a lot of people who are against it tried to delegitimize the Supreme Court. So on both sides, we don't have respect for institutions on both sides.
That's not true. That's not true.
I think it is true. I think it is true.
That's not true. It is true. It depends. I can have no problem holding people accountable. Black people send black people to jail all the time in this jury system. What we're trying to do is this. It isn't a 50-50 country. Even right now, this popular bill, the bill just passed, 60% of people don't want it. It's still going to happen. So we're having an argument where we're parsing words. The truth of the matter is that most people are having a problem with the things they're seeing. His hardcore support is they're unassailable. They will not move. Do not tell me most of the country is like that. I do think this. I think most white people would not say that they're white nationalists or white supremacists, but they do agree with the goals of them, which is to keep white people in charge. I think
it goes beyond white people. But we will table
to be
this
continued.
Maybe next week.
To be continued.
Thank you, DL.
Thank you always, man.
Have a good Fourth.
Yeah, they're gonna kick me. They kicked me out of Mexico, so I'm getting back.
Okay.
All right, man.
Okay. We are going to take a break.
All right. When we come back, Keith Urban doing a little interview about his music when, of course, Nicole Kidman comes up. Something about her sex scenes. You're going to see his reaction when we come back. If you're Keith Urban, you got to be kind of used to getting questions about Nicole Kidman, right? And by the way, I'm sure Nicole Kidman gets questions where people ask her about Keith Urban.
Well, not just that, but questions about sex scenes with Nicole Kidman, of which there are plenty.
There have been plenty in recent years. So listen, this was Keith doing an interview with an Australian radio show, Haley and Max in the Morning. And yes, Nicole Kidman and her sex scenes came up. Well, here's how Keith handled it.
What does Keith Urban think when he sees his beautiful wife with beautiful younger men like Zac Efron having these beautiful love scenes on TV and radio? Oh, why has that happened? What's just happened to you?
He's disconnected from Zoom.
Did he just hang up on us?
I think his team hung up on us because they didn't want us to ask that question.
Does Keith Urban hate us?
I knew that was going to happen.
Do we have beef with Keith Urban now? If you knew it was going to happen, why didn't you stop me asking the question?
That's why I said to you, I don't want to have a part of this, because I don't want to ask these questions because he'll hate us. I don't want to make him feel uncomfortable.
First of all, I think this could be his publicist, and I don't know who it is, but it may not just be Keith. But the other thing is, it's like there was something in there, there was a little nugget in there, that maybe it wasn't so much about her sex scenes, to say...
Zac Efron?
No.
The young Zac Efron?
A younger man like Zac Efron. The adjective is what may have pissed him off. That it's. How do you feel about her having sex with a younger man?
Yeah, and it's crazy that they brought up that movie because when I heard the question, one, I really wish Keith would have answered it because late last year, I saw Baby Girl, and I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but that was literally the first question I thought to myself. What does her husband and her children think when they're going and watching it?
I know,
but Baby Girl was like a lot. It was like a lot.
It was a lot.
Apparently, I got to see this movie.
We've talked about this a million times. What does the husband think? What does the wife think?
Right.
So it's like, I don't know that Keith hung up. It may have been his team, but whatever it was, they were pissed off at the question.
So now the question's going to haunt him. Now everyone's going to try and sneak the question in there.
Right.
Or no one's going to ever seek the question and we're never going to
Or he'll never do an interview again.
Yeah, and we're never going to see what his reaction is.
Hey, Nikki NYC, and I totally understand his frustration. I would be frustrated as well, and I think it was the younger man portion that actually made him a little bit upset. However, Nicole Kidman, it seems like she has re-entered her prime, and it seems like she's not going anywhere. He needs to get comfortable with it, and I love her movies.
I was thinking, if I were married to Nicole Kidman, they wouldn't have to say younger man, because every man would be a younger man, right? Am I boring you? By the way, am I boring you?
I'm just putting Baby Girl on my watch list. There we go. Apparently I've missed out.
That's hysterical. Okay, we're going to take a break.
All right, when we come back, Cailin Clark gets snubbed from the WNBA All-Star team by at least, as far as her fellow players are concerned. Did they actually snub her, or is this the right decision? Well, Cailin Clark's next trip to the office might be a little awkward because she's basically found out her coworkers don't think she's as big a superstar as the fans do. And so the WNBA, the All-Star vote came in. The fans, no shocker, voted her number 1. But the players voted her only the 9th best guard. 9th. That is some disrespect right there. Even legendary Dick Vitale had to sound off on this. He said, absolutely pure jealousy that WNBA players voted Cailin Clark the 9th best guard. Someday they will realize what she has done for all of the players in the WNBA. Chartered planes, increase in salaries, sold out crowds.
But hold on.
Improved TV
Those
ratings.
are not things that make somebody a number 1 player. That's a benefit to the sport.
Right.
But it's not something that makes somebody... Now, wasn't she sidelined with an injury for a while?
Right, to Harvey's point, she's missed 7 out of the 16 games that the Fever have played, and she's actually been ruled out tonight, so it'll be her 8th game that she's missed this season. She's also not doing as well as she normally does when she is on the court, and that's probably due to all the injuries she suffered. 39% from the field, 29% from three-point land, so she's not as good this year.
Do you want to tell us about those stats, and how does that stack up with the competition?
Tell us
all about your sports knowledge.
All I'm thinking, Edward, is based on what I just said, like if I were applying as a PA for the sports department, you'd hire me, wouldn't you?
You actually hit it on the head. You're
See?
right.
I hit it on the head.
Oh my God.
I hit it on the head. I hit it on the head. Nailed it.
Here's what I want to give you credit for. You literally just overheard that conversation while you were having another conversation this morning.
That's absolutely not true.
You overheard Kyle and Siobhan talking about it this morning, and you parroted back exactly what they said.
I did not know.
Give Kyle his credit.
I did not even know this was
That was
discussed.
word for word what Kyle said this morning.
I don't listen to Kyle. I didn't listen to Kyle.
Hey, it's AF currently down in Florida, and I 100% agree with Dickie B. He hit the nail right on the head. Cailin Clark is bringing in millions of new fans to the WNBA, and everyone that's crying like, oh, we don't want to see you in the All-Star game. They can't help but make themselves look jealous. Like, why would you want the one person bringing in all the fans to be there? And if you can't fall in love with her, at least fall in love with all the money that she's making the league.
But the players are looking at the results of what she's done on the court. And by the numbers, they feel she's 9th best. That doesn't mean she's not a superstar.
Yeah, you can't look at what she's done for the sport. That doesn't make you the number 1 player.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
All right, when we come back, awkward moment, perhaps for Matthew McConaughey ignoring a fellow A-lister. What gives? Look, I tried to give our producer Kyle credit last segment.
Incorrectly.
And you wouldn't give him the credit. Now I'm going to blame him also because he told me that Matthew McConaughey dissed an A-lister who was sitting next to him, Gillian Anderson.
So how would he disrespect her? He didn't.
I guess he would disrespect her.
He did not.
He snubbed her in some way.
He's talking to Emma Roberts.
He's talking to Emma Roberts.
And she's in the middle. But
yes, he is.
He's having a conversation.
Leaning over her, but what's the...
So what?
Yeah, that's not a diss, Kyle.
Now you wonder why I ignored.
You know what? You were right. Kyle doesn't know what he's doing.
It's like it's like blah blah blah. No, like white noise. And
we're completely kidding. We love Kyle. We really do, and we're going to explain to him what a diss means, and then we move on. That's it. Everybody learns.
We'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Kyle.